What if I told you that you already have everything you need in order to become a confident wine taster, even if you can't tell Malbec from a Merlot? Forget about wine snobbery, forget about that complex jargon. In just a few minutes, you will unlock a couple of simple secrets to truly appreciating wine.
First of all, what a sad world would that be if there was no wine? Quite honestly, I have no intention of stopping drinking wine anytime soon. This is for fun
Cheers,
only.
everyone. All right, wine lovers, or maybe wannabe wine lovers, if up until today you thought that wine tasting was only for people whose pinkies are stuck in the air permanently, I have good news for you. It's really not. And I'm going to show you a couple of things and going to tell you a couple of tricks why wine tasting isn't just drinking. It's really a full-on sensory adventure. You learn how to find flavors you didn't even know existed, impress your friends without sounding like a pretentious sommelier or something, and maybe, just maybe, make your next glass of wine taste 10 times better. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Here's the thing. Anyone can drink wine, but tasting wine, that's where magic really starts to happen. Think of it this way. You can listen to music, or you can really listen to music and start dissecting, picking on drums, bass lines, some harmonies. And I think that tasting wine is just the same. It's about noticing things, slowing down, maybe unlocking some flavors, some senses that otherwise were hiding. And guess what? Secret for you, you will sound much, much cooler at your next dinner party because you can be drinking a $12 bottle of wine and say something like, oh yes, delicate notes of plum and tobacco with a whisper of earth flavors. And all of a sudden, everyone thinks you know your stuff. So the sensory playbook, the see, swirl, and smell. The color of your wine is a total spoiler alert. Is it pale straw white? Then it's probably young, crisp, and refreshing. Is it deep golden? Well, maybe it's aged or even oaked. And for reds, a bright ruby color could mean a lively fruity wine, while brick red hints at some age. And sometimes the color may just tell you how badly you need to clean your glassware. Now, swirling wine isn't just for showing off. Matter of fact, it aerates the wine, letting oxygen release aromas. So think of it as waking your wine up from a nap. Just be careful if you're new to this because I've lost way too many good shirts to swirling way too vigorously. Now, sniffing is where your nose earns its paycheck. So go ahead and stick your nose into that wine glass, just not too deep unless you like wine up your nostrils, and take a really good sniff. You might catch fruits like berries or citrus, maybe spices like cinnamon, or even earthy notes like mushrooms or that smells right after it rains. As far as tasting goes, we have three more S's here: the sip, swish, and savor. Sip first. And really let it coat your tongue fully. Notice any acidity. Does it make your mouth water? That means that it's acidic. Then are you noticing any sweetness? So is it lingering in your mouth? And then of course the body of the wine. So I like to think of the body of the wine like milk, for example. So if it's a lighter bodied wine, it's going to be like skim milk. And if, say, it's a medium-bodied wine, it will be your whole milk, and then the full-bodied wine will be like cream. So, good analogy to have. Probably something I wouldn't say at a wine tasting as far as comparing wine to milk, but for yourself and your understanding of how the body of wine goes, that's really helpful. Okay, so next up is swishing of the wine. The swishing of the wine really just helps you get that wine everywhere in your mouth and making sure that you not only touch all of the sensors of your tongue and your mouth with the wine, but then also you kind of even aerate it a little bit while it's in your mouth. So there are a couple of things and a couple of ways of how to do it and things not to do. So you can do it a few different ways, like this. Literally swishing it in your mouth. What I like to do is something a little bit different. Looks a little silly, but I don't care. The only thing that I'd like for you to do is please don't ever swish your sparkling wine unless you want to spit it out and end up with this bubble bath in your mouth and look absolutely ridiculous. So the third S, or the third component to tasting, is savoring, of course, and that's what happens after you swallow the wine. It's that finish, the long, lingering, beautiful finish that leaves our mouth and our throat absolutely coated after we sip a good wine. We don't want for it to just disappear very quickly. I refer to that as like fast food of wine, right? It's tasty, but it's quick and it's gone. We want the finish. So the longer that beautiful sensation of that deliciousness of that warm feeling stays in your mouth and your throat, the better. All right, my future wine tasting experts, let's demystify a couple of wine terms, or some wine lingo, if you will. We'll start with tannins, which surprisingly confuse a lot of people. So those are compounds from grape skins, seeds, and even oak sometimes that give wine structure. And sometimes that drying, puckery feeling in your mouth is what tannins leave behind. So I'd like for you to imagine some pretty well steeped black tea with no sugar to it. That's tannin right there. That's actually the same exact compound. So if you're used to black tea drinking, you should know the feeling of tannins. A little drying, a little puckery. The next term that confuses a lot of people is that body of wine, right? So light-bodied wines are almost weightless. It's like a summer breeze or a feather, if you will. And then full-bodied wines, well, that's like a cozy winter jacket or a blanket. Acidity is another term that's sometimes confusing to people. So that's your zing factor. It's something that really makes your mouth water, and then low acidity feels just a little bit softer on the mouth. Sweetness is another one. So sweetness level can go from bone dry to slightly off sweet, and it just has to do with sugars that are left in wine after the fermentation process. Next up are varietals, a term that's also a little confusing to some people. Well, varietals are literally just different grape varietals. So Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay. So Cabernet Sauvignon is your bold and confident friend. Pinot Noir is that artsy and sensitive friend. Chardonnay, well, she can be crisp and fun, or buttery and indulgent, depending on her mood. But all of those and more are grape varietals. And the last word that really confuses a ton of people in the beginning of their wine journey is the word terroir, and it's really just a fancy French word that describes that the wine is tasting the way it's tasting because of where it comes from. So the soil and climate, the altitude, even the winemaker's cat, if that cat walks through the vineyards long enough. So that's why, because of terroir, some people who are really into wine, when they visit vineyards, they pick up rocks and they lick the rocks to taste that terroir that goes into the vines and into the wine later on. So my wonderful absolute beginners to wine tasting, I want to give you a couple of final tips to make this beginning of wine journey a little bit more enjoyable for you. So first and foremost, when it comes to sipping wine, go for beginner-friendly wines. So start with a light, crisp white wine like Sauvignon Blanc, for example. Explore that. Then move on to something more complex like a Pinot Noir, medium-bodied red wine. And then finally build it up to a punchier tannic wines like Malbec or Cabernet Sauvignon, for example. Now, when it comes to pairing wine and food, step away completely from that color organization of tasting wines with food. So red wines with meat and then white wines with fish or vegetarian dishes. Step away from that completely and go by the weight of your wine and food. So go with lighter bodied wines for lighter dishes that you're eating, and then heavier wines, fuller bodied wines with heavier foods that you're eating, and you will be just fine. Additionally, you don't have to be alone on this journey. There are a ton of apps that are available right now, such as Vivino, for example, a ton of books available for you to learn more about wine from, and then also channels such as mine, for example. So make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell in order not to miss any videos coming your way. But all of those resources are available for you in order to learn more about wine. And then also wine tasting groups. People gather together like in the good old times and taste wine together and then discuss it and just have a lot of fun. So I encourage you to look up those wine tasting groups in your area where you live. So if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I post videos all about wine, making it simple and more enjoyable for you on weekly basis. So I'd like to see you here again. Stay sipping, stay curious, and until next time, cheers everyone.